There are quite a few Dior Sauvage fragrances on the market now, especially with the release of the brand new Extrait, so I thought I'd make a video to help you decide which one might be the right one for you. It's not just a case of going into a store and picking up any old bottle of Sauvage, because they are very different. The EDT here at this end that was released in 2015 compared to the brand new Extrait released in 2026. There's a whole lot of different going on here, so let me talk you through it. Good old Johnny has been selling us Sauvage for a few years now, but where did Sauvage come from? Why is it here? Why did it become so popular? It's not just a fragrance that was created out of thin air. This is actually a very modernized interpretation of a classic gentleman's fougere barbershop fragrance. It cleverly utilizes that lavender which is at the heart of many classic gentleman's fougere barbershop style fragrances, but what those fragrances also have is herbals and oak moss. Dior threw that oak moss out of the window, which gives a fragrance a heavy, slightly damp forest floor sort of accord, which is still a great smell, but possibly associated with more vintage classic perfumery. That is not what Dior wanted with Sauvage. They wanted something very modern smelling, so they took that lavender, they retained certain elements of this classic gentleman's barbershop fragrance, but added some modern pepper and loaded it with ambroxan. And they came up with a gem. They came up with a fragrance that changed the game. This is probably the most popular designer fragrance currently on the market because it ticks a lot of boxes. It's clean, it's fresh, a lot of people like that sort of smell. It's got a very sexy, modern appeal to it, but with just enough of a nod to masculine perfumery of years gone by. There is really not much at all to dislike about this fragrance. It's certainly a crowd pleaser. Dior hit the bullseye when they released this back in 2015. The only reason why someone might dislike this is because it's become so popular, so common, that not everyone wants to wear a fragrance that everyone else is wearing. So I think that's where most of the dislike towards this fragrance comes from. But if you take the scent itself, if you take the Sauvage scent profile, I think it's stunning. So is this the right fragrance for you? If you're just getting into fragrances, if you've not really explored much in terms of niche perfumery, if you don't like to take risks with your scent, if you want to wear something that is very mass appealing, very crowd pleasing, that is pretty much going to be liked by everyone around you, and it doesn't bother you in the slightest that you might encounter quite a few other people smelling the same as you, then this one might be the fragrance for you. One thing to note about this is it is listed as an EDT fragrance, which is just the concentration of oils in it, but it is very strong. This is one of the strongest designer fragrances you will ever come across. It massively projects, very long lasting. That's not something that you find often with eau de toilette scents. If you want something that is youthful, sexy, masculine, massively projecting, Sauvage EDT could be the fragrance for you, especially if you're young and you're going out, you're going into bars, maybe you're going into clubs and you want people to smell you, you want your fragrance to cut through everybody else's fragrance. Sauvage EDT is going to do that. The only thing by now with this fragrance being a few years old is associations. You might encounter someone who had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that used to wear this fragrance, and maybe things didn't end quite so well. Maybe they've not got fond memories of that old flame, and now you're smelling like that old flame. So there's a bit of a association that even though this is a really nice smell, it's been around long enough and it's popular enough for people to associate it with people in their lives that they don't really want to remember. So if you come along reminding them of that person, they might not think you smell that great. But other than that, I think it's a great scent. I still love to wear this one. Then came along the Eau de Parfum version, and it smelt very similar to the Eau de Toilette. It's just a little smoother, a little more rounded, a bit less projecting, so if you didn't want that massive ambroxan bomb that was perhaps a little obnoxious to some people and was just too strong for some people, the EDP could be the right choice for you. If you like that Sauvage, modern, masculine sort of smell, still got enough energy and enough that's youthful about it, the EDP is potentially the one for you. It's a little bit smoother, a bit more rounded, a bit more assured. It's maybe a little more mature than the EDT. Not by much, but if you just wanted to make that next step up to a very, very similar sort of smell, just a little bit more refinement, the EDP is doing that. The next one in the lineup is the Parfum. That is one that I don't have because I felt that between the EDT, the EDP and the Parfum, the differences were quite minimal. So I didn't end up picking up the Parfum because I felt I was happy with the EDP. But think of it like this, the changes that you got from the EDT to the EDP, you're going to get a similar change again to the Parfum. Smoother, a little deeper, a little richer, a little more grown up, a little more mature, but still youthful enough and not quite as projecting. As with a lot of fragrances that have EDT, EDP and Parfum, I feel that the EDP sits right in the middle. I think it's the sweet spot. I think it's the best of both worlds. Much like with Bleu de Chanel, I think the EDP has the best parts of both the Parfum and the EDT. It just sits right there in the middle. So if you want something that is the balance of the best of the line, then EDP is often the way to go. And for me, I think that is the case with the first 3 Sauvage fragrances. So if you're a little older, if you are 30s, 40s plus, and you really like that Sauvage smell, but you want to smell a little bit more refined, the Parfum could be the one for you. And then, just when we thought the Sauvage line had been exhausted, when we were thinking, where could they possibly take this scent from here? EDT, EDP, Parfum, not much really had changed. So what were they going to do next? I suppose the logical next step would be to release an even stronger oil concentration of the same sort of DNA. So even longer lasting on the skin, but still dialed down on that projection, even from the Parfum, and a little more maturity. That's what I thought they were going with when they announced the Elixir. That is not what Dior went with. They went in a completely different direction. They wrong-footed everybody and came out with the excellent Elixir. This retains enough of that original Sauvage DNA, the lavender, the bergamot, the ambroxan, to be identifiable as a Sauvage fragrance, but only just because this goes in a completely different direction. It loads things up with spices, with licorice, it intensifies the lavender, it dials down that screechy ambroxan. What you get is a very robust, darker scent that has a lot more attitude. It's still a very modern evolution of a classic gentleman's fragrance, but this one leans more into 80s powerhouse fragrances like Kuros, like Drakkar Noir. It's got that sort of rugged, very manly, very masculine, very strong smell. This is just as projecting than the EDT, if not more so, but the scent itself is even more piercing than that. So the issue with this fragrance is if you overspray it, it's that strong, it's that piercing that it could just become a little bit obnoxious. So the key with Elixir is to not overspray. If anything, underspray, and it's still going to be massively projecting off you. So you've just got to go careful on the trigger with this one. I love where Dior went with this. I love the conviction. I love that they dared to do something different. They weren't just releasing another samey flanker in the same line that we were all expecting. They did something different. It moves just far enough away from that very mass appealing sort of smell we expect from designer fragrances. It still retains enough of that to keep designer people in there, but it also brings perhaps more niche people, people who were fed up of the overused original Dior sort of smell. They got something that they could actually wear with this because it sort of straddled that boundary between designer and niche. It's more expensive for one, but it's more creative. They took some creative risks with the Elixir. They cleverly made it a bit more mature, aged it up by just the right amount that the people who'd bought Sauvage in 2015 but had got tired of that smell, they felt maybe that was associated with an earlier, younger version of themselves. Well, this version of Sauvage was suddenly a Sauvage they could get on board with again. All those people who loved the original but had aged out, aged into this one and bought this one, and this sold a lot. This was the first really popular fragrance that started using Elixir, not to denote an oil concentration. There had been other fragrances called Elixir, but this modern trend of every fragrance line having to have an Elixir in its lineup started here. Dior blazing a trail, doing something different, having the confidence to do something different, and I think changing the game again. I think they changed the game again with this, just like they did with the original EDT. If you want something strong, if you want to turn some heads, if you want something that still has a pretty decent mass appeal element to it, then the Elixir is one that you should smell. And then they watered things down completely, because with Francis Kurkdjian's first Sauvage fragrance as Dior head perfumer, he created Eau Forte, which is a water-based fragrance. No alcohol at all in this one. Another brave move from Dior. I don't think this one paid off in the same way that Elixir did. The smell is kind of strange to me. I don't dislike it. It doesn't really smell much like a Sauvage fragrance to me. It could have been its own non-Sauvage Dior release. And on my skin, it just didn't work. It has this slightly weird, rubbery, minty sort of smell. I know that's not the case for everybody. This fragrance definitely does have a few fans. a few. So it's not terrible, but you don't really hear of many people hyping this fragrance up. I think it's great that Dior tried to do something different. The only people that I would say should be looking at this fragrance are people who don't like to have alcohol. Maybe you're allergic to it, maybe you get some sort of skin irritation. If that's you, then definitely try Eau Forte, because it could be a fragrance that you really love. The scent might work for you, and if you're really limited as to what fragrances you can wear, if you do have allergies, then this is definitely one you should go into a store, try, see if you like the smell. But for me, this is my least favorite in the Sauvage lineup. The latest release, this is brand new, this is Sauvage Extrait. And if you thought the Elixir was a bold swing, that was nothing compared to this. Of all the other Sauvage fragrances, the one that this is closest to is the Elixir. This is definitely an evolution of that Elixir sort of smell. There aren't any spices or that licorice listed in this, but I feel like they've lifted some of that Elixir DNA into the Extrait, but they've intensified everything. The lavender seems more intense, the woods seem more intense. Part of the reason for that woody intensity is this is a Sauvage that contains oud. Vietnamese oud. If you know anything about oud, you'll know that it can be quite a divisive sort of smell. It can smell what we call funky or barnyardy, animalic, a little bit fecal. I know that sounds horrible, but that is just a way of describing a very pungent, potent oud. When you smell this, you can tell that there is oud in here, but they've been very careful to make this a very palatable sort of oud. They've taken the rough animalic edges off and retained everything that is great about oud in terms of the depth and the firepower and the strength it adds to a fragrance. It's even more robust than the Elixir. It's even more potent. It smells stronger, I think, in terms of its projection and longevity, pretty similar to the Elixir, but the scent profile itself is just stronger and more intense. In going down that route, you do have to compromise on versatility, and this one definitely does. I couldn't wear this in as many situations as any of the other Sauvage fragrances. I could just about pretty much wear Elixir whenever I want, in the summer, in the winter, for formal occasions, for casual, depending on the sprays. I could wear Elixir really whenever, and I do. But this one, I think you are more limited to the scenarios when you'd wear it. This is the sort of fragrance that you would wear when you really want to make a statement. And those occasions for me are formal occasions, special occasions, times when you do want to be smelled, times when you do want your fragrance to sort of own the room and maybe stand above everybody else's, times when you really want to be noticed. And for me, those are special occasions. And for me, those occasions don't come along too often, but they do come along. And when they do, this fragrance absolutely kills it. If the Elixir was too strong, complex, and a little bit obnoxious for you, then I don't think you're going to appreciate this fragrance, because it's dialed all those elements up. But if you loved the Elixir and you were there for more of that, you wanted something even stronger and even more noticeable and head-turning, then the Extrait is a fragrance that you should definitely try. Big, bold swing. Here we are talking about a Sauvage fragrance that has oud in it. I never thought we'd see the day, but the day is here, and I think this is an excellent release from Dior. That's my take on the Sauvage lineup. I hope this has been useful for anyone thinking about buying a Sauvage fragrance, but you're not quite sure which one to get. I would love to hear from you guys out there. Which is your favorite? Do you think this is one of the best designer lines ever created? Do you think Dior are right for taking some huge creative risks that we don't often see in designer perfumery? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. If you like this video, you know what to do. Hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you do all that, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.